Religion, politics, do they affect the Middle East? Let's find out right now. Hello and welcome back to the AME Nightly News. I'm Ethan Howard with today's top stories. Most Americans have a general understanding about what's going on in the Middle East, but don't really know how these countries interact with one another and how these places operate. The Middle East, for as long as it's been established, has been an area constantly influenced and dictated by religion. Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. All places with conflicting and different types of religion that are constantly competing against one another for power and prevalence. Looking even deeper into these nations, there are conflicting groups who are currently fighting for religious powers, such as the Shias and Sunnis in Israel. With religion being such a large focus in the Middle East, religion starts to bleed into the political structure, making them largely intertwined. Even today, we still see the Middle East having the same problems they've had for centuries, all fighting against one another based off their beliefs, their gods, and their land. With such a vast variety of religion in the Middle East, terrorism towards one another never stops, always fighting for others to fear them as the strongest. Recently, in today's present day, the two Muslim groups, Sunni and Shia, are fighting over the land in Israel. These same groups are also fighting in other areas, such as Iraq and Iran. We currently have our own Harrison Hadley with Amir, who is originally from Iran. Harrison?
Thanks, Ethan. So right now I'm with Amir, who is originally from Iran. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Generally, how was your time overall in Iran, and what were some of your experiences, and what do you remember about living there?
Pretty much I lived there for like 12 years, and I came here after that, but generally life was pretty good over there, and mostly like I had a pretty good time over there. Yeah.
Do you think in most people's daily lives in Iran it has a large part to do with religion?
Yeah, like maybe like 80% of the people over there are pretty religious about stuff.
Why did you and your family originally leave Iran?
Because my dad had started a business over here, and he wanted a better life for me, so like he thought like if I move here it would like benefit me in like school and like education overall.
A large majority of people believe that especially just in the Middle East in general, that religion and politics should be separate. Do you feel the same way, or where do you stand in general?
I like mostly in Iran, religious stand as a big deal, so I think if it was separated, maybe people would feel more comfortable.
And I guess just to end it off, do you enjoy living in the U.S. now over Iran, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I rather live here.
So thanks for the interview. Really appreciate you coming out and taking the time to do it.
Thank you for having me.
And now we go back to Ethan in the studio.
Thanks, Harrison. The Middle Eastern politics have conflicts to deal with too. What we know to us as a tragedy is a normal day occurrence there. Terrorism is the leading cause for conflict in the Middle East. For decades, the different ethnic groups within the religions have been terrorizing each other to prove they are the most superior. These attacks have even started to bleed into the rest of the world. For us Americans in the past 20 years, we've started experiencing some of these tragedies, such as the Boston bombing and 9/11. In 9/11 alone, nearly 3,000 died, whether it be from the towers falling themselves, the crash into the Pentagon, or the field in Pennsylvania. There is no way for anyone to control terrorism because it's something known to be unpredictable. Those who have gone to the Middle East say that you can never tell the good from the bad because they all know things that you don't and refuse to say anything. The terrorist groups are already extremely lethal, and they're only continuing to grow. They have stolen heavy artillery and military-grade weaponry from the government and used against it. ISIS, one of the biggest terrorist groups around the present day, has made itself known to be possibly the most dangerous group since Al-Qaeda. Just recently, President Trump has destroyed key points of ISIS and was able to weaken them, but truthfully, there's no way to take them out for good. This all leads back to our main focus, how religion and politics affect the Middle East. Much like any terrorist group in the Middle East, ISIS has been able to take over parts of the government due to the fear they bring towards government officials. The U.S. has been at war with this crisis for years, and we still ask the age-old question everyone wants to know. When will the fighting stop? Moving away from religion and looking back into politics, the U.S. recently pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, which was in negotiations for much of the Obama administration. Pulling out has sparked a fear amongst certain groups of Americans. The Iran deal for years was still believed to be a plan for both to relieve tensions and limits with Iran's nuclear program. According to the Trump administration, the Iran deal was actually made due to the 20% of U.S. uranium gifted to the Iranian government from the Obama administration, and has costed the U.S. billions of dollars, making the only option to pull out of the deal. However, the Trump administration is currently in works with another nuclear deal, this time with Saudi Arabia. Trump claims that this will not only be a massive economic opportunity, but an opportunity to improve relations with Saudi Arabia themselves, and they are now considering a deal with the U.S. and allies to control its manufacturing business of nuclear weaponry. Nuclear bombs are known to be just as a dangerous bomb that, upon explosion, can destroy mankind entirely. But most people don't actually know how this nuclear bomb works. As the bomb is dropped through the air, a uranium bullet passes through several chambers, attracting neutrons and electrons, causing them to rub against one another rapidly. This creates nuclear fission. As the bullet reaches the front, it quickly makes itself back to the back of the bomb again and continues this process at a very fast pace until it reaches a certain heat level and the nucleus of the atom splits, repeatedly creating a large amount of energy, in which turn causes the explosion that everyone's so familiar with. But now we're going to look at more of a positive story. Taylor Pachadze and her family lived in Israel at one point in her life, and once again our own Harrison Hadley got to sit down with her to learn about how her life has been living in both Israel and America. Harrison?
So today I'm here with Taylor, who her and her family have both lived in Israel before. How's your day going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. When did you originally live in Israel?
Between 4th and 5th grade, we moved there end of 4th and came back middle 5th.
Was your family originally from there, or when did your family live there?
Yeah, my dad was born there, moved away, moved back, and then moved to the U.S., and then my mom grew up there and was born there.
Why did your family come to the U.S.?
My dad was an immigrant, so they left Israel to move here and have a better life, and my mom married my dad and then moved here.
So when they moved here, why did you go back to Israel?
They wanted me to get dual citizenship, and they wanted me to basically grow up and become more like Israeli rather than like an American.
How does life compare in Israel compared to here?
It's very different because the kids, or like people in general, are much more self-sufficient, and you know, everyone does everything on their own. So I'd walk myself to school at the age of like 7 alone.
Is there anything to you that kind of stood out while you were living in Israel?
Well, just like the more maturity of everyone there, like just from a young age you learn to be like on your own and do everything yourself because parents are always at work. So.
Do you prefer the lifestyle like here in the U.S. or do you prefer it in Israel?
A little bit of both, because the friendships are different, just the environment is different, so it's like a win-lose situation.
Did you like feel just like sad at all when you were leaving Israel, or were you kind of relieved to come back to the U.S., or was it a mix of both?
I mean, it was a mix of both because I didn't have much that I was coming back to because I was new to my school in the first place, but I was very upset to leave my family.
Do you ever plan on returning back to Israel, or do you plan on staying in the U.S.?
I'm planning on going to the military there after high school.
How has your life been impacted compared to like living here compared to there?
Well, I got to see like how it is like being like all on my own and basically doing everything for myself, or like living more in a war zone rather than like a place where everyone's mostly peaceful.
So what are some of like the best moments or kind of like the highlights from you living in Israel?
Honestly, the food and like just having my family all the time was pretty great.
So are you currently like not living with like your main family, or what's your like, current situation in the U.S.?
I live with my parents and like my 2 sisters, and my grandparents from my dad's side live here, but that's like basically all the family I have here, and then the rest of my family, both from my mom and dad's side, are in Israel.
Well, thank you for this interview. I really appreciate you taking time out of your
Thank
day to
you.
actually do it. So now we go back to Ethan in the studio.
Thanks, Harrison. You know, with the current climate we live in, positive stories need to be heard. Here on our news station and others, it's constantly filled with terror and stories that are just plain scary. So to hear a good story is important. And with that being said, that's all of our news today. This has been another edition of the AME Nightly News. I'm Ethan Howard. Good night.